Welcome, everyone. I'm Pat Mitchell. Welcome to Fallout Shelter. Join me today is Adam, of course, and we're going to be talking about a specific tweet that we saw. We're also going to be talking about, it's kind of like a two-part episode. We've got quite a bit of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about wheelhouse, how to trade within your wheelhouse, why you don't step outside of that, the repercussions, the consequences of stepping outside of that. So this is a penny stock trader. And he asked for some advice out there. So what I want to do, and it's no secret that I'm not a fan of this guy, but what I don't want this to turn into is just a biased rant. That's not what it's going to turn into. When I read this tweet, I'm going to answer this question that has been asked exactly like if one of you sent me this question, okay? It's going to address a bunch of really important stuff, especially about looking in the mirror and getting to like the bigger, deeper seated issue. There's a lot of issues with this that have never been addressed in his 12-year trading career. And that's what's led him to this point. So you're going to kind of see how it progresses. And I do suggest sticking around and watching this one. I know there's going to be a lot, especially, for penny stock traders that are out there, that they're kind of at the point where they're like, man, there's got to be a better way. And I'm not talking about him. He'll never change. I'm not expecting him to change, but I am expecting a lot of you out there to change and see things maybe through a different field of view. And because like I did and like Adam did and like 90% of all traders, retail traders, where they start is penny stocks. And then they get to a point where it's like, well, there's got to be a better way. Right? Like this isn't working. The ups and downs, the roller coaster, the craziness, the gamblers, debauchery that goes on with penny stocks is real. And I think a lot of adults or people that have a professional mindset want to steer clear of that. Okay, so I'm going to read this here and then we're going to have some thoughts on it. So I know this is a long post. I'm not going to read exactly the whole thing. I'm just going to sum it up. So real talk, this is something I've been personally struggling with, and that is finding a balance between paying yourself, wiring out, and leaving money in the account for buying power, it's a pretty valid question, right? Like I'm not taking away from that at all. It's a valid question. It's a question that people ask all the time. It's like, when should I wire out? But let's continue. So obviously, after big years in 2020, 2021, I had multi-millions in my account. As many of you guys know, I decided to reward myself by taking a couple of million as down payment for my mansion. He has a house in the Hollywood Hills. I don't know if I'd call it a mansion, but it's a house in the Hollywood Hills, and a couple $100K for the Lambo. Those were the only two real big purchases I've really made. Now he goes on. Now, obviously, I shouldn't have lost an additional $6 million in profits due to piss poor trading, but discounting that, we're going to kind of get to that. Despite the fact that I bought the mansion at near the dead bottom, and currently it has appreciated about $1 million in value since, but obviously, unlike a stock, it's not easily, you can't really liquidate it easily is what he's saying. You can't sell it quickly. I guess so. I still can't help but to think, given the trading opportunities recently, that if I had not made those purchases, that I would feel so undercapitalized and would have more buying power to generate even more profits. So again, my question to you guys, how do you determine the balance between paying yourself and leaving money in the account to trade with to maximize buying power and fully take advantage of market opportunities? Which again, just that part is valid. Okay. Seems like it's a tricky question, as I'm sure some of you guys have wired out large amounts, perhaps just literally one day before a big play shows up, and you're thinking, damn, I should have kept my money in there to trade with. I constantly dread the idea of wiring out, honestly, for this reason. What are your first impressions of that, Adam? I'm curious to hear what you have to say, because I know what I'm going to say, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's actually quite a bit here. And it really I can appreciate him putting himself out here and asking this question because you're going to get annualized, right? And this is what we're doing. So that takes a lot of courage to do that. And a lot of times when you step out and expose yourself, you expose things about yourself you don't even know that they are there. And what hits me right off the bat is this is such a hard part of growing in any way. It's you think you're asking the right questions. And to me, what the first thing is he's asking the wrong question. It shouldn't be, how do I move money around? It should be, well, what is the behavior that I'm engaged in that is causing me to lose $6 million in profit? Why isn't he asking for information about that? Because then if he solves that question or answers that, that's going to require behavioral change. But then it's also going to help automatically solve the other problem that he's having. This almost regret or not understanding how to recapitalize himself after the losses. Well, fix the losses, you don't have to ask that question.
So yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is. I don't think he's asking the proper questions. I think he's asking the wrong question. Now, for some of you that may not know, now he's owning up to 6 million in losses. It's not correct. It's not correct. He was on a race to make 20 million in 1 year. He got up to, and my numbers are going to be wrong because I don't remember off the top of my head. He got upwards of 18 million or 15 million. Then he wiped all of those out and then some. So it's not that he lost 6 million. It's actually more. It's actually at least at a minimum double that, which is crazy. The way I'm looking at it and the way I'm reading this is he wishes he never bought a house or a car. So that's kind of number one. Those are assets, right? Maybe not the car, but one could make the argument that exotic cars do have a resale, right? Depending on the make, model, year, series, the whole nine. But the house is kind of the big one. I don't know if anyone could ever regret buying a house. That's money in the bank, man, right? Especially if you're buying in a good market and everything else. Now, he says he got a good deal on it. So how can one ever feel bad about assets? Okay, that's something I never feel bad about. I could go on and on and on and list my assets. There's not one I ever regret. Now, I own multiple pieces of land. I own multiple houses all over the place. I own a house in Canada, a house in Michigan, a house down here in Costa Rica, plus we're building another house. That's money in hand. That's money I'm always going to have. Not to mention the bare land that I have all over the place in the United States, in Canada, and down here in Costa Rica. Plus, we're always looking for more. Plus, there's other assets, right? So it's no secret that I'm, a huge watch collector. I've got about 2.2 million watches, and they're all easily liquidatable. And one of the reasons why I like watches, just for a little side note, is if shit ever hit the fan, I could literally strap at least at a minimum $1 million to my wrists, to Chrissy's wrists, to her feet, and start a life somewhere else. I'm saying if like shit really hit the fan, right? Like these are things, these are safety nets, these are assets. You should never regret assets, right? But then to take it further, when he's saying he's basically regretting these purchases because he would have more money in his account. That 2 million plus 200,000, so $2.2 million is all he has spent on assets. Well, that doesn't compare to the 6 million, and it's not 6 million, it's much more, that he lost. Why is he regretting those purchases instead of the actual piss poor trading? Because remember, in his exact words here, he said, now obviously I shouldn't have lost an additional 6 million in profits due to piss poor trading, but discounting that. No. What do you mean discounting that?
That's the core of it.
Yeah, that's the core. You can't discount that. This is one of the reasons why he's continuing to make these piss poor decisions. It's not about piss poor trading. That's a large part of it. But it's the piss poor decisions that go along with it. Would you ever regret buying an asset?
No, absolutely not. And the second, you begin to accumulate wealth of any sort, one of the first things to do to protect that wealth is to put it at least one step away from yourself,
Yeah.
right? So that you can't just go in on an emotional trade, a revenge trade, and just continue the behavior, right? It forces you to stop and think about what you're doing because you can't get to that. So it has two purposes. The asset should appreciate over time if it's a good asset, but then it also helps give you a buffer in case you get yourself into trouble. So you can have a cool down period.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, and it just kind of popped in my head. Now, Adam's talked about this before on Fallout, and he had a really successful business, and then in the restaurant business, and then COVID hit, and he fucked him hard. Did any asset help you pull through that? Like, did any asset kind of give you a safety net?
No, not at the time.
Not at the time. Okay.
No.
If you had,
Yeah.
okay, would you be breathing easier?
Oh, 100%, 1,000%.
Okay.
Like, 10,000%.
Getting at, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, and by the way, we learn from that experience, and now we are building those safety nets because we were living more of a fly by the seat of our pants lifestyle.
Yeah.
We were engaged in behaviors that through that situation, we said, no, we're not doing that again. We completely scaled down. We had spent money on things that were putting us in debt, and just made that whole situation that much harder. So we completely changed our behavior, and we're 100% debt free. Anything we buy now, we pay cash for.
Yeah. And that's just it, right? Like, so I come from a welding contract background, like a blue collar background. And there's a saying, right, that we always have. And it's a saying that everybody's heard. It's make hay while the sun shines. And that's really big in the oil industry up in Alberta. You'll hear people say that a million times a week. We know it's boom or bust, right? But we all don't live like that. I never lived like that, where it was like I actually thought ahead. And there was so many times where everything would be going so well and you would be fucking rolling in dough, man. I used to drive down the street and have people tell me to roll down my window when I was driving around in my welding rig. And they would say, how much are you making right now? So I would tell them, and they say, well, I'll give you 150 an hour. Right? They wanted me like that, like immediately offering me way more than I was making. I never took it because I don't roll like that. I honor my contract. But what I'm saying is that's when those times are good. Now, when things started getting slower, you really wish you would have got your shit together and like saved some of that money. But just like Adam does, and I've done, and I'm sure a lot of you have done, we don't think about the future that way. When things are good, things are always going to be good, right?
Yep.
It's kind of human nature. It's almost like a self-defense mechanism. We don't want to think about the negative. We think we're bulletproof, and we think nothing bad will ever happen. We know it could happen, but it'll never happen to me, right? And what I'm getting at with that question to Adam, and then his response was just like fucking spot on, is that's what's going to save you. But the question is, it's like for someone to say that they regret those purchases, but that's not the problem. You need to get to the core of the problem. And I think that that's something that if anyone came to me with this, that's how that would be flat out. No, like you can't discount that. You can't. Straight up, you can't. You cannot just stuff that deep down inside because that's what's put you in this position. So one of the next things, and I want to get your take on it. So the last statement seems like it's a tricky question, as I'm sure some of you guys have wired out large amounts, perhaps just literally one day before a big play shows up. And then you're thinking, damn, I should have kept the money in to trade with. I constantly dread the idea of wiring out, and honestly, for this reason. So what do you think about that?
If you're putting yourself in a situation when you're wiring out money and then you immediately regret it, it just really seems like you don't have a plan. that you're just kind of winging it as you go. And level of professional status, you always have a plan. You have to have a plan. You plan your trade, and you plan how you're going to manage your money once it comes in, and you plan your life when times get hard. The market has a shift. You take some losses. There should be a plan for that. And so to me, that just suggests that just shoot a lifestyle and a mentality of shooting from the hip. It's looking one day ahead, not 10 weeks ahead or a year ahead at a time. So there's a lot of growth opportunity there in just that statement alone.
Yeah, it's a gunslinger. It's one of the things I've always referred to him as is a gunslinger, and there's a lot of them out there in that world. Not thinking about tomorrow is really going to put you in situations, that they're going to be rough, and it's hard to dig yourself out of those situations, as I'm sure he's finding right now.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, now I'll give you my thoughts on that. If you wire out of your account, right? And he says he doesn't like to do that, essentially, because what if the next day you have a big opportunity? Well, the question that begs to be asked is, but how do you know? Do you understand how hindsight a question like that truly is? Like, the stock market opens up the same way every single morning at 9:30 a.m. Stock market opens, stocks go up or stocks go down. They consolidate, and then they pick a direction. Now, the majority of the days, it's very normal action, right? Like just a regular day. Either they go up or they sell off a little bit, whatever they do. How do you know while you're entering in that trade that it's the play? So therefore, how would you use your buying power to your advantage in a situation that you don't know? See, we have I've worked with 30,000 traders plus at this point. It's probably closer to 35 or 40,000 traders at this point, to be honest. And they all come in the same way. They come in with a very hindsight and looking back type of mentality. And it's the FOMO, fear of missing out. Everybody's heard that. That's what this fellow has. That's what Matt has. It's constantly a fear of missing out. That's something that should have been remedied as a first-year trader. Now, granted, there are traders that have traded longer than a year or so, and then they come into the room and I quickly fix them of that. How, after 12 years and considering yourself a professional trader and doing this in a professional capacity, could you possibly still have an issue with hindsight and not understanding that how crazy that question is? It's like trying to predict if it's going to rain 5 years from now, 5 years from today. Like, do you know what I mean? I know that's a horrible analogy. It's just the first stupid fucking analogy that popped in my head. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's like, how do you know, though? It's a real hindsight, miserable way of thinking that's only going to leave you like mentally damaged. Because like I've always said, I've always told my members and traders to just pay yourself, like, and just in a specific trade, right? We have a saying, it's 1/2 inch, 1 inch. And if you're a member, you know what that is, right? I'm not going to get into detail with that. But then people will say, it's like, oh man, I wish I took more size in that trade. But then I always ask them, but how would you know? Would you still be holding that all the way down? The answer is no, or all the way up, however you want to look at it. The answer is no, you won't, because you need to pay yourself correctly as a professional. You pay yourself into technical support or resistance. So where's the problem? I think that's the question I have back for him. It's like, well, where's the problem? Like, where can you give me a logical response, something that isn't based on hindsight and just based in fact? How can you tell me that it would matter? That's kind of the bigger issue. He's looking at things with a gamble perspective, a hindsight perspective, and a very level one new trader, first year trader perspective. And I know he's not going to like hearing that.
It's the symptoms, and that comes, I think, into the second part of the conversation as well, understanding your wheelhouse. Because if you have a clearly defined wheelhouse, you will never trade in a way that compromises your wheelhouse because it's clear. And if you are wiring money out, well, you're never going to be in a situation where you undercapitalize yourself it'd be like cutting, if you have an orchard that produces fruit, you wouldn't cut down more of the orchard than the fruit you need to make a living off that fruit, right? You would keep a balance of, I need my fruit to produce. And then for expansion purposes, you don't want to compromise your ability to produce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that comes back to lifestyle. So if you've got a lifestyle that is exceeding the amount you're producing in fruit, well, you have an imbalance. And so that's the root of it is correcting the imbalances. And how is my lifestyle? How is my wheelhouse? And getting all of them clearly defined and organized in a way that has structure. So if you do hit hard times, you don't lose everything under your feet.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we just had a trade on Thursday on Apple, and I was giving a very specifically designed lesson. Now, you got to remember, how I do things is not how the rest of trading services are done, especially when I'm dealing with lessons and specific lessons. I'm giving a tailor-made lesson to somebody's question. So the question that was asked, we had a trade plan for it. And the question was asked at 10 a.m., which is, you're starting to get into reversal time and you're starting to get into a bunch of nonsense. That's why we want to trade the first half an hour. So now we're getting outside of that. And the question was asked, is Apple still valid? Is Apple's trade plan still valid? So I answered the question the way it was stated. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll take it with you. You want to take it, right? Because people hesitate. And that's why this lesson was given. People hesitate. And they can't hesitate, because if you hesitate, you're going to miss those opportunities. If you have speed, distance, valid support or resistance level, take it, right? So he took it. I took it along with him. And of course, you have knuckleheads out there that immediately, they'll just jump in, right? They don't understand the trade plan. They don't understand that I'm giving a lesson, which is something that I've talked about 1,000 times on screen share. I'm giving a tailor-made lesson to that specific member, right? So we took the trade. It comes into a level. It barely bounced, but we entered, paid ourselves, booked in small profit. Then it had a lot of moving average protection below, okay, on the daily chart. So we were to add into that next level. So it comes into that level. It bounces, we enter, we pay ourselves, and then we don't know it's going to be weak yet, right? We don't know. Just like he was talking about keeping that money into his account. We don't know. So as it double bottoms, we add on confirmation. A few minutes later, you can start seeing that bid drop out. And it's something that I went into great detail yesterday, Friday over. Once you recognize that, you are averaging in, you're correcting your average, and it's very tight, okay? It's a trade that is not inside of everyone's wheelhouse. It just isn't. And there was a real possibility, because of time of day, that trade was going to turn into that. So I took it, averaged in, kept it real tight. Next opportunity on a pop, I got out. So I made $675 in that trade. Okay. You can go on Twitter and go see the trade recap on Thursday. I discussed this a little bit. Like, with that said, if you cannot handle certain trades, I always tell my members, the outside levels are for you. You need to trade within your wheelhouse. And I can show you the chart and we can talk about it a little bit more. But I think it's just more of just a mentality thing. It's real hard to get through the traders that we are running a class. This is a class. This is just treat it like you're in a college lecture. That's what's going on here. And they're kind of missing that. And they just want to be button pushers. They want to be button clickers. And we had a member that executed that trade, had absolutely no plan, fought it all the way down and fucked his account. It's so disappointing, because for those that don't know me, right? Like, maybe this is the first time you're watching this and you're coming from a place of just looking at what I'm talking about as just another trading service, right? You don't understand the attention to detail and the amount of care that we put into our members here at Tricktrades. I actually give a shit. I don't want to see people get fucking blown up. People blow up due to their own piss poor trading and mentality, right? Like that's the number one reason. And this chart here on Apple, I could pull it up. I think it would only help here.
And what's great about this chart is this is probably one of the worst case scenarios that can happen in a trade when you go long.
Yeah.
And just being able to see that there is a level of skill out there where the absolute worst case scenario that can happen in a trade can in fact be managed with the right skill and training. And that's what is so wonderful about this particular chart, because to be able to be green on this is just a testament to the level of skill that is here, that all of us members get to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was our level here, this 175.99 level. So we had speed and distance into that level. We execute coming down into the level. You see it bounces. Doesn't look like much, but trust me, on option, it's more than enough. So we paid ourselves. It comes down into those moving averages. There were moving averages here, okay? You don't really see them, but the 20 SMA was there. So we add into that, and it kind of confirms, pops up again, and just gets stuffed. So as it washes out, you add into that. It comes back up to bump its head. It cannot clear. You see this right here, right where my mouse is pointing. You have to remember that, and there's a lot of volume there, and it's increasing. If you can burn that into your mind, that is the bid dropping out. And what they're going to give you is this candle here, right at 1029, right there. They're going to give you that candle. And where it comes up to and pops up to is right back into that support. There's not a lot there, but that's why I was talking about averaging in, keeping that average real tight, because it's about to drop out. Now, you got to trust me when I tell you that it will pop up that last time. As it does, you need to mark it out, everything you've got. Get out of that position. That is it's throwing you a ball, and you better catch it. Because of time of day, so I got out, trade's done. It drops out, just like I said it would. The problem is, what people don't realize is time of day is everything. We are looking for these trade plans to trigger at the market open. So at the market open, it dips, it comes down into this level. If it happened within 5 minutes, there would have been a sufficient bounce. The more time goes by, the least your odds are of success in that trade. Doesn't mean don't take it. It means you can take it, but you need to trade it tight. You need to be cautious. You need to be watching it. And if you don't have the skills or the chops to take a trade like that, don't take it. It's a difficult lesson to learn, right? Like a lot of people will have a hard time with that lesson because you don't know what you don't know type of thing. It's kind of one of those things. It's difficult to know before it happened, but there are certain tells, there's times of day, there's all sorts of things that tell you that it's outside of your wheelhouse. You know, I know Adam kind of struggled with that at the beginning, and I just kind of want to get his thoughts on that. Like, what made it so difficult to listen or to trade within your wheelhouse? It's something I say like literally all the time, and I know I'm on repeat on it. So why did you fight me on that? Like, what would you say? Why were you fighting that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why was I fighting? I think because it's very hard to surrender. You know, coming from an entrepreneur background, I'm always relying on myself to figure stuff out. I taught myself how to code. Yeah. You know, I've probably written over 1 million lines of code, well over that myself.
Yeah, for those that don't know, not to interrupt, but Adam is so fucking talented. The shit he's done, I guarantee you have used in your regular day-to-day, and he invented that technology. So very brilliant guy, and I'm happy to have him on. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to pump you up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, in my 20s, I taught myself to write. You know, I was a vice president of a writing associate, president-elect, South Florida Writers Association. You know, I was running a writers group in my 20s, and there's many other things. So everything I've done throughout my life has always been wake up, figure it out, wake up, figure it out. So why would I change? Why would I've done all this other stuff. I figured everything out. I barely even had a high school diploma.
Yeah.
And so my whole life has been extremely independent. And, moved to Florida with a one-way airline ticket and $400 cashier check. Never been there before when I was 19. So always on my own. And coming to a trading thing, like, oh, I'm going to figure this out too. I figured everything else out. And that was delusional. 100% delusional, because everything that had allowed me to do the things I had done in my past 100% does not agree with the art of trading. They're not compatible. And so I was fighting you because it was just simply who I was. I was programmed to fight you.
Yes.
And it was a long journey that we'll, talk about in other podcasts, of coming to terms with what humility truly is, and what surrendering yourself truly is to somebody else who has the experience and talent and ability to actually teach. You can have experience and talent, but being a good teacher is a whole another skill and discipline. And so I would get in these trades. Oh, I'm going to figure this out. And I ride that thing all the way down while the options melt to zero. $1,000 losses keep happening. And then, one day it's like, all right, this has to be fixed. And so that was how I finally, it was enough pain. I was the kid who literally put his hand on the stove to figure out what that felt like. Yeah. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
So why would I not do that later on in life, especially when it comes to trading? I'm gonna do the most possible damage I can do to myself before I realize that was stupid.
Yeah, I think people have a real hard time in trading to ask for help or get help. Their ego wants to creep in.
Very hard.
And this is coming from Adam, who, like this is just a small little portion of what he's done. He's a brilliant man. And for someone to to need help and to understand that they need help and to actually listen and give in, you got no excuses then. And that goes for everyone out there. Like, trading's it's very different. It's such a fucking different ball game that it's even hard to put into words how different it really is. And that's why we focus so much on mentality and those subtleties, because man, it really is a different ball game. To kind of wrap this one up, we don't have a lot of time here this morning. If you're looking for help, it's fine to look for help, but you got to be asking the right questions. You got to be willing to work on yourself. You can't just ask a question out into the public, and when somebody gives you a response that maybe is the real talk coming back at you, maybe you don't want to hear it, but you better fucking listen, right? All of these problems that Max has, Aiden has, those two people, Aiden was so open to what I talked about yesterday on Screen Share. I addressed this problem and he hit me up, and he couldn't be more thankful because it fixes the problem. Right? That's the only objective here that it should be, is just help me fix the problem. I'm open to anything. If you told me to jump off my fucking roof holding an umbrella and a plastic bag, you got to trust me, this will fix it. I'm willing to fucking try it, man. And I know, again, it's a real stupid analogy, but sometimes some of these fixes in trading to fix this fucking noggin of yours, it's going to seem like that. And maybe you just don't want to hear it because it's coming from a certain person, right? But maybe start looking at who has more success in their life, right? Does the person actually live a successful life? Does he have his shit together? If the answer is yes, then fucking listen. Just listen. Just listen. Like, I know for a fact I could fix Max's trading and his mentality in a month if he was open to listening. I would even do it for free. And I don't even like the guy. I don't. Like, I've never liked the guy, right? We've always been like this. He'll never really say much, but I've seen on the back end, right? He's talked major shit. And that's why I've always went after him. And I'm not trying to go after him in this. It's actually like a legitimate plead to him. Either get fucking help, fix your shit, or you need to stop. You will lose every last penny like you did on Dries when you blew up. Now, you may say that is just an anomaly in a black swan event, but what led to that?
Right.
Because every single time, I call it like clockwork. I do it all the time on Twitter. I know when he's about to take a massive loss, and I call it within a day or two because I see his mentality shifting and that ego creeping in. And once that ego creeps in, boom, he's done. He's fucked. He's going to take another 100, 200, 300, 500 million dollar loss like he's taken before. I've seen it. And I know it's coming because this is where he starts getting antsy. For right now, this is the first time in over 2 years that he has been green on the year. The first time in over 2 years, a so-called professional trader being green on the year. And now he wants to, like, you can tell he's about to throw it all away. He's talking about like increasing buying power and all of this. And it's like, fuck, man, I wish you would just learn. I don't like you. I don't see anyone fail. I don't think people realize that about me. Even the people I don't like. I don't want to say I hate because, I've never really met the guy, but I know what he's like, right? I've had feelings with him. I don't want to see him fail. I really don't. I don't want to see anyone fail. Right? It makes my stomach turn because it's fixable. You know what I mean? And I know some people maybe not, they don't buy that, but I'm fucking telling you, man, if you really knew who I was and like know how I am on a personal level, I don't want to see anyone fail because it's fixable. And that's where my frustration comes in because I see the talent there and he does have talent. He does. He missed a lot of things because he's never evolved as a trader. But those are just facts. That's how it is. He doesn't look at the daily chart. It's only the 1 minute chart. He'll say he looks at the daily chart, but he doesn't. He misses big plays. He goes short on Tesla all the time when that daily chart is 100% long, man. That squeeze is coming, right? And they're fixable. They're fixable problems. And I think that's what it boils down to. And this is to everyone. It's not even just him. It's like we're just using him as a vehicle, right? Be open to listening, guys. There's a world out there that once you find success, man, I tell you, I wake up every single fucking morning and I just like, it's a fucking dream life. It's like, I don't know what the fuck I did in my past life to deserve this, but must have been doing something right, man, because it didn't start out this way. I can tell you that right now. Life was fucking rough, dude. I have not lived a charmed life. I can tell you that right now. Contemplated fucking offing myself and suicide many a times because life fucking sucked. And to go from that and then just having enough, being sick of my mentality, sick to my stomach, thinking like that and turning things around, it's doable, man. I'm fucking living proof of it, man. And life throws you a lot of fucking curveballs and life will kick you in the nuts. Do you get up or do you lay down? Those are the only two questions. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up unless you got anything, Adam.
Just the parting thoughts on, we opened this conversation just about someone asking questions and maybe they weren't the right questions, but at least he's asking questions. And I think we all need to be living a life. If we're telling ourselves things versus asking questions, that alone can be the beginning of a shift. If you're struggling, stop making statements and start asking questions, and then information can now start flowing inward. And then be sure to listen to the right people who have a life that mirrors the life that you want. So if there's one takeaway, it's what questions are you asking yourself? Are they the right questions? And if not, how do you find the right questions?
And are they actually truthful questions? Like, to me, like asking this on the internet, looking for engagement, that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like an actual question. Like, you're telling me after 12 years of trading, you don't have anyone that you could turn to that you trust, someone that you trust that to give you advice. You're asking the internet this question. Like, this is a serious question. So again, is he actually serious about this? I know he's almost wrecked. If you're worried about spending $2 million or $2.2 million as a trader that's been doing this for 12 years and you're worried about $2.2 million, there's other issues at play here, right? So is this an actual truthful question? I don't know, right? But, I think it gave an opportunity to maybe reach some people out there, especially penny stock traders, There's far better ways of doing this. And the fucked up thing is, I forgot to talk about, and I do want to add, and I know Adam's got to get going here, but the one thing that's important, he doesn't even need to increase his buying power. He doesn't need to worry about wiring out. This is about options. He does trade regular stocks too. So sure, you couldn't trade options maybe on your penny stock bullshit, but on Nvidia and Tesla, yeah, they're there. And he'll say, oh, they're not liquid enough. Bullshit. Yes, they are. Just look at the level 2. That'll answer any of your questions about how liquid they are. And if you wanted to take $100,000 position, a position that is small for you, Max, in the world of penny stocks, that is a monstrous position in options. And you can make easily 100 grand, 200 grand, 500 grand on that trade with options, with 1,000 contract position. It's monstrous. You're talking millions and millions of dollars in that position, stock wise. So you don't need to worry about wiring out or anything else. Like, there's solutions to this, guy. There's solutions. It's just about being open to listening, right? Like, people don't want to trade options because they get scared of options. And this goes to all penny stock traders. Like, options. I don't trade options. I execute via options, but we don't trade options. Adam, do you trade options?
No. Just trade the chart.
Absolutely. It's very doable. So I'm going to wrap this one up, folks. I wish we had more time today, but we will see you on the next one, guys.